The hour of convening having arrived, all members of this house will please report to their assigned seats. All members will please report to their assigned seats. The clerk will ring the bell. All members will please report to their seats. We are going to have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote present, green, to signify their presence in the chamber, and the clerk will unlock the machines.
Thank you, sir. Take a load off. Yes, it feels good.
Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Have all members now voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. Doorkeepers will please close the doors and keep them closed. Well, good morning. Top of the week to you. I hope you had a great weekend. The sun was shining. Great weekend. We will begin our day today with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the lady from the 73rd House District, Chairman Karen Mathiak. Chairman Mathiak.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. Today, I have the distinct pleasure, along with Chairman Knight, Representative Camp, and Representative Crow, to present our pastor, Pastor Benny Tate. He has served for over 30 years as the senior pastor of Rock Springs Church in Milner, Georgia. The church has grown from 80 in attendance to more than 8,000 under his leadership and has 7 campuses. The following ministries are a part of Rock Springs Church: Rock Springs Medical Clinic, Rock Springs Christian Academy, the Potter's House for Women, Impact Street Ministry that cares for homeless. Dr. Tate serves as the president of the Congregational Methodist denomination and has served many times as chaplain for the United States Senate, the United States House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., and right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Tate has authored 4 books: One More Night with Frogs, Happy Wife, Happy Life, When You Follow a Star and Find a Stable, and Bennyisms, which is incredible. Pastor Benny and his wife Barbara have been married for over 35 years and have a wonderful daughter, Savannah Abigail. They currently reside in Forsyth, Georgia, and with that, I present to you Dr. Benny Tate.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here, and thank you, Karen, Ms. Karen, for that kind introduction and dropping my books. One she mentioned, Happy Wife, Happy Life. That's true, amen? I learned a long time ago that if mama's not happy, there ain't nobody happy. And if daddy's not happy, there ain't nobody cares, amen? And but I want to share a scripture, but I just want to say thank you for your service. I realize that. I realize from Speaker Ralston on to every representative. It's a sacrifice. It's a service for what you do. And from the bottom of my heart as a Georgian and as a pastor, I simply just want to say thank you for all you do. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And I've been coming for a long time. We've got new people, and then I see my friend, Brother Calvin here, that we've been coming for 30 years together. He's been coming for 47. And it's just an honor and privilege to be with you wonderful people. There's a scripture that says in 1 Samuel 17, David said, the Lord delivered me out of the paw of a lion. The Lord delivered me out of the paw of a bear. And the Lord will deliver this Philistine into my hand. I want to take just a few moments, and I want to talk to you about defeating giants. Defeating giants. You know, we live normal lives, and we have problems along the way. I've got problems, you got problems, all God's children got problems. But I want you to know something. Every once in a while, a giant will jump up. Every once in a while, we will encounter a giant. And that's what happened to this boy David. There was a giant. He was almost 10 feet tall. He weighed 500 pounds. His armor was 150 pounds. And he encountered a giant. And if we live long enough, we'll encounter giants. But David overcame his giant. And I want to just give you some steps to overcoming the giants in our lives. The first step is persistence. Persistence. You know, David didn't get a lot of encouragement. His daddy didn't encourage him. His brothers didn't encourage him. King Saul didn't encourage him. But David just refused to quit. You know, persistence is what got the snail on the ark. Some of you are slow, but you're worth waiting for. Amen? Persistence is what got the snail on the ark. He just refused to quit. You know, Sir Winston Churchill was asked on one occasion, what equipped you to lead Britain during World War II? What gave you the ability to lead Britain through the most difficult time in the history of that country? And Sir Winston Churchill said, I repeated a class in grade school. And the reporter said, wait, so you flunked? And Sir Winston Churchill said, no, I didn't flunk. I was given a second opportunity to get it right. And I'm grateful for the second opportunities we have to get it right. I want to encourage you, if you're battling a giant, just be persistent. Just don't quit. But then there's a second step. It's progression. When David went against that giant, he said, the Lord delivered me out of the paw of a lion. The Lord delivered me out of the paw of a bear. And he'll deliver this giant into my hand. Here's what I want to encourage you. God's going to see us through. God's going to see us through. He always has seen us through. Are we going to get through COVID? I'll promise you we're going to get through COVID. Because we've gotten through things before. And I'm grateful in our lives that we can look back and say, God's always brought us through, and He'll bring us through this. How do you conquer a giant? You do it through persistence. You do it through progression. But you do it through some proven weapons. Some proven weapons. Saul said, why don't you take my armor? David said, no, it won't fit. And there's some proven weapons. One of those proven weapons is the Bible. Our first president, George Washington, said, we can't govern without God in the Bible. Another proven weapon is prayer. Abraham Lincoln said, I've been driven to my knees by an overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. My wisdom and all about me seemed insufficient in the day. And there will come times that our wisdom and all about us will be insufficient. How do we overcome the giant? persistence, progression, proven weapons, and in conclusion, Brother Speaker, when my daughter was a little girl, I was speaking one Sunday and she brought a friend home with her. And that friend was in church for the very first time. And I said, in conclusion, and that friend said to my daughter, Savannah Abigail, what does it mean when your daddy says in conclusion? And Savannah said, absolutely nothing. But I promise you, in conclusion, there's one other thing to defeat your giant. It's praise. Before David defeated the giant, he was grateful. He expressed gratitude. He hadn't won the battle yet, but he expressed gratitude. I'm convinced many times we're grumbly hateful when we ought to be humbly grateful. And gratitude will change our lives. I heard about a lady that got up one morning and she had 3 hairs on her head. And she said, you know, I believe I'll braid my hair today. I'll tell you what changed a lot of people's lives if they just learn how to smile. I tell preachers that your church would grow if you just teach your people how to smile. You say, well, Pastor Benny, I don't have any teeth. Well, just gum me to death. Amen? Just smile. She gets up the next morning. She's got 2 hairs on her head. And she says, you know, I just believe I'll part my hair in the middle today. She gets up the next morning. She's got 1 hair on her head. And she said, you know what I believe? I believe I'll just wear my hair in a ponytail. She gets up the next morning, Miss Susan, and she's got no hairs on her head. And she said, praise God, I don't have to do my hair today. You said, Pastor, I'm battling a giant. Persistence. Persistence. Just stick in there. Stick in there. Number 2, progression. God's brought you through. He's going to bring us through this also. Number 3, proven weapons. It's the Word of God. It's prayer. And number 4, you just praise. You just express gratitude. Somebody said, thank God for dirty dishes, for they have a tale to tell. While others are going hungry, we're doing pretty well. With home, health, and happiness, we should not make a fuss. By the stack of evidence before us, God's been very good to us. God's been very good to us. Let's stand to our feet and pray. Lord, I want to thank you for the privilege of being here today with Speaker Ralston, and I want to thank you for being with Representative Mathiak, and what a privilege to be with friends, because I consider these people my friends. I thank you for their service to our great state, not only their service, but their sacrifice. And I pray today your protection, I pray your wisdom, I pray your guidance upon them and upon their families, God. Encourage their families as these individuals serve us. And I'm wise enough to know, speaking to this many individuals, there are needs in their midst. And God, meet the needs of these representatives today. And for all you do, we're going to praise you. For I pray this prayer in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Speaker, I appreciate you.
Doorkeepers will unlock the doors. Chair recognizes Chairman Hogan, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Information and Audits has read the journal of the previous legislative day and found it to be correct. And I probably need to remind folks today what came from a Native American. He said the left wing and the right wing belong to the same bird.
Chairman Hogan, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Mr. Burns, 159th, moves following be established as the order of business in the first part of the period, unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions, first reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, second reading of bills and resolutions, report of standing committees, first reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions, morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions, the clerk will read.
House Bill 532 by Representative Werkheiser, the 157th bill be titled Act to amend Title 34, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to labor and industrial relations.
Industry and Labor.
House Bill 533 by Representative Yerda, the 152nd bill be titled Act to create the City of Sylvester Public Facilities Authority.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 534 by Representative Bonner, the 72nd Hitchens, the 161st Montana, the 17th Corbett of the 174th, and Barton of the 5th. Bill be titled Act to amend Article 2, Chapter 11, and Title 16, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to offenses against public order.
Public Safety and Homeland Security.
House Bill 535 by Representative Yerda, the 152nd bill be titled Act to amend and Act to provide a new charter for the City of Sylvester.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 536 by Representatives Laricki of the 169th, Bonner of the 72nd, Perkle of the 155th, Lott of the 122nd, Corbett of the 174th, and others. Bill be titled Act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 38 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to emergency management.
Judiciary.
House Bill 537 by Representative Scoggins of the 14th, Powell of the 32nd, Gamble of the 15th, Lumpson of the 12th, Tarvin of the 2nd, and others. Bill be titled Act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to elections and primaries generally.
Special Committee on Election Integrity.
House Bill 538 by Representative Stevens, the 164th bill be titled Act to amend Title 50 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to state government.
Economic Development and Tourism.
House Bill 539 by Representative Cooper, the 43rd bill be titled Act to amend Article 2, Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to Medical Practice Act of the state of Georgia.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 540 by Representative Scott of the 76th, Davis of the 87th, Hobson of the 153rd, Jackson of the 64th, Williams of the 168th. Bill be titled Act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 2 of Title 40 and Part 2 of Article 10 of Chapter 5 of Title 48, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to prestige license plates.
Motor Vehicles.
House Bill 541 by Representative Bruce, the 61st, Beverly, the 143rd, Bodie, the 62nd, Jackson, the 64th, Thomas, the 39th, and others. Bill be titled Act to amend Chapter 12 of Title 50 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to commissions and other agencies.
Governmental Affairs.
House Bill 542 by Representative Bruce, the 61st, Mitchell, the 88th, Jackson, the 128th, Frazier, the 126th, Allen, the 40th, and others. Bill be titled Act to amend Part 1 of Article 1 of Chapter 2 of Title 38 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions relative to the state militia.
State Properties.
House Bill 543 by Representative McLaurin of the 51st, Cannon of the 58th, Lim of the 99th, Shannon of the 84th, Park of the 101st, and others. Bill be titled Act to amend Title 40 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to motor vehicles and traffic.
Motor Vehicles.
House Bill 544 by Representative Powell of the 32nd, Collins of the 68th, Oliver of the 82nd, Jaspers of the 11th, Smyrie of the 135th, and others. Bill be titled Act to amend Chapter 27 of Title 50 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to lottery for education.
Regulated Industries.
House Bill 545 by Representative Carson of the 46th, Jones of the 25th, Jaspers of the 11th, Barr of the 103rd, Irwin of the 28th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Part 14 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to other educational programs under the Quality Basic Education Act.
Education.
House Bill 546 by Representative Stevens, the 164th, and Petrie, the 166th. Bill be titled an act to provide a new charter for the city of Richmond Hill.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Bill 547 by Representative Henderson, the 113th. Bill be titled an act to amend Code Section 22, 1050, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to a brief period of quiet reflection.
Education.
House Bill 548 by Representative Dempsey, the 13th, Reeves, the 34th, Wade of the 9th, Oliver the 82nd, Dubnik of the 29th. Bill be titled an act to amend Code Section 49, 5, 41 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to persons and agencies permitted access to records.
Juvenile
House
justice.
Bill 549 by Representative Gwen of the 89th, Cannon of the 58th, McLean of the 100th, Park the 101st, Holly of the 111th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 34 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to sex discrimination in employment.
Judiciary.
House Bill 550 by Representative Lim of the 99th. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 40 of Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to real estate brokers and salespersons.
Judiciary.
House Bill 551 by Representative Wilkerson of the 38th, Carter of the 92nd, Lewis Ward of the 109th, and Smith of the 41st. Bill be titled an act to amend Part 12, Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the effectiveness of educational programs.
Education.
House Bill 552 by Representative Cooper, the 43rd, England of the 116th, Kelly the 16th, Burns the 159th, and Williamson the 115th. Bill be titled an act to amend Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance.
Ways and means.
House Bill 553 by Representative Gunner of the 8th, Reeves the 34th, Abstration of the 104th, Burchett of the 176th, and Smith of the 18th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 13 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to administrative procedure.
Judiciary.
House Bill 554 by Representative Gunner of the 8th, Abstration of the 104th, Smith of the 18th, Moptahan of the 17th, Oliver the 82nd, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 9 of Chapter 14 of Title 44 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to Liz Pendens.
Judiciary.
House Bill 555 by Representative Gunner of the 8th, Burchett of the 176th, Abstration of the 104th, Leverett of the 33rd, Smith of the 18th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding pretrial proceedings.
Judiciary non-civil.
House Bill 556 by Representative Gunner of the 8th, Reeves of the 34th, Abstration of the 104th, Leverett of the 33rd, Smith of the 18th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 4, Chapter 7 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to accusations.
Judiciary non-civil.
House Bill 557 by Representative Smith of the 18th, Washburn of the 141st, Jenkins of the 132nd, Mathis of the 144th, and Green of the 151st. Bill be titled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 2, Chapter 8 of Title 12, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to solid waste management.
Natural resources and environment.
House Bill 558 by Representative Jackson, the 64th, Bruce of the 61st, Bazemore of the 63rd, Thomas of the 65th, and Dreyer of the 59th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 62 of Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to development authorities.
Governmental affairs.
House Bill 559 by Representative Jackson, the 64th, Smyrie, the 135th, Mitchell, the 88th, Hobson, the 153rd, Bodie, the 62nd, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Code Section 4286, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to special license plates.
Motor vehicles.
House Bill 560 by Representative Taylor, the 173rd, LaHood of the 175th, and Watson, the 172nd. Bill be titled an act to amend the act creating the Board of Commissioners of Thomas County.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Bill 561 by Representative Fry, the 118th, Weedower, the 119th, Gaines, the 117th, and Nullowitz, the 42nd, and Alexander, the 66th. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 3, Title 44, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to condominiums.
Judiciary.
House Bill 562 by Representative Carpenter, the 4th, Ridley, the 6th, Goggins, the 14th, Cooper, the 43rd, Perkle, the 155th. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 3, Chapter 4, Title 17, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to warrants for arrest.
Judiciary non-civil.
House Bill 563 by Representative Jones, the 25th, Pruitt of the 149th, and Gullett of the 19th. Bill be titled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 48, The official go to Georgia Entertainer relating to general provisions for sales and use taxes.
Ways and Means.
House Bill 564 by Representative Smith of the 41st. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 13, Chapter 6, and Title 40. The official go to Georgia Entertainer relating to special provisions for certain vehicles.
Motor Vehicles.
House Bill 565 by Representative Kenner to the 102nd, Marin of the 96th, McLaurin of the 51st, Carter of the 92nd, McLean of the 100th, and others. A bill be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 10 and Title 17. The official go to Georgia Entertainer relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment.
Judiciary Non-Civil.
House Bill 566 by Representative Burchett of the 176th, Hitchens of the 161st, Saints of the 180th, Corbett of the 174th, Crow of the 110th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 3, Chapter 5 of Title 40. The official go to Georgia Entertainer relating to cancellation, suspension, and revocation.
Judiciary Non-Civil.
House Bill 567 by Representative Cooper of the 43rd, Jones of the 47th, and Nolowitz of the 42nd, Dempsey of the 13th, and Martin of the 49th. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 12 of Title 31 of the official code of Georgia Entertainer relating to control of hazardous conditions.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 568 by Representative Wilson of the 80th, Couch of the 50th, Douglas 78th, Allen of the 40th, and Schofield of the 60th. Bill be titled an act to amend Code Section 33-9-21, the official code of Georgia Annotated relating to maintenance and filing rates.
Insurance.
House Bill 569 by Representative Wilson of the 80th, Drennan of the 85th, Oliver of the 82nd, Buckner of the 137th. Bill be titled an act to amend Title 43, the official code of Georgia Annotated relating to professions and businesses.
Regulated Industries.
House Bill 570 by Representative Neal of the 74th, Jackson of the 128th, Lopez of the 86th, Lim of the 99th. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 35, the official code of Georgia Annotated relating to Georgia Public Safety Training Center.
Public Safety and Homeland Security.
House Bill 571 by Representative Neal of the 74th, Jackson of the 128th, Lopez of the 86th, Lim of the 99th. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 35 of the official code of Georgia Annotated relating to employment and training of police officers.
Public Safety and Homeland Security.
House Bill 572 by Representative McLaurin of the 51st, Gunner of the 8th, Oliver of the 82nd, Bodie of the 62nd, Walensky the 79th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 3, Chapter 8 of Title 17, the official code of Georgia Annotated relating to conduct of proceedings in criminal trials.
Judiciary Non-Civil.
House Bill 573 by Representative Singleton of the 71st, Collins of the 68th, Powell of the 32nd, Jaspers of the 11th, Lot of the 122nd, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 5 of Chapter 5 of Title 48. The official code of Georgia Annotated relating to county boards of tax
Ways
assessors.
and Means.
House Resolution 182 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd, Stevens of the 164th, Williams of the 168th, and Petrie of the 166th. Resolution encouraging the state of Georgia to establish a Georgia Gula Geechee Heritage Society.
State Planning and Community Affairs.
House Resolution 183 by Representative Knight of the 130th, Rhodes of the 120th, LaHood of the 175th, Donohue of the 30th, Corbett of the 174th. A resolution urging the Congress of the United States to pass the Recovering America's Wildlife Act.
Game, Fish, and Parks.
House Resolution 184 by Representative Stevens, the 164th. A resolution proposing amendment to the Constitution so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by law for pari-mutuel bidding.
Economic Development and Tourism.
House Resolution 185 by Representative Ralston the 7th, Watson the 172nd, Jaspers the 11th, England the 116th, Dickey the 140th, and others. A resolution reauthorizing House Rural Development Council.
Economic Development and Tourism.
House Resolution 186 by Representative Buckner of the 137th, Frazier the 126th, Wilson the 80th, and Nolowitz the 42nd, Oliver the 82nd. Resolution creating the Joint Medicaid Sustainability Study Committee.
Health and Human Services.
House Resolution 187 by Representative Beverly, the 143rd, Wilkerson the 38th, Mitchell the 88th, Robichaud the 48th, Bazemore the 63rd. A resolution urging the expansion of Medicaid.
Health and Human Services.
House Resolution 188 by Representative Schofield, the 60th, Beverly, the 143rd, Mitchell, the 88th, Hutchinson, the 107th, Smiley Hunt's 35th, a resolution supporting the creation of a state work group to increase chronic disease information and screenings.
Health and Human Services.
House Resolution 201 by Representative Neal, the 74th Lopez of the 86th Jackson, the 128th Lim of the 99th. A resolution promoting and encouraging local law enforcement agencies to incorporate mental health operatives.
Public Safety and Homeland Security.
Senate Bill 46 by Representative Burke of the 11th, Watson the 1st, Hatch of the 50th, Miller of the 49th, Kirkpatrick of the 32nd, and others. Bill be titled and acted amend Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to health.
Health and Human Services.
That completes first readers.
Before we go on to second readers, I ask you to give attention, please. Some of you, I think, still need to go downstairs and be tested. So I'm going to remind you, you have now until 11 a.m. to get down there and get your test. I know that as we go on, it kind of gets easy to forget, but forgetting is no defense. Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 2 by Representative Dunhoo of the 30th, Tarvin of the 2nd, Barr of the 103rd, Cantrell of the 22nd, Clark of the 147th, and others. Bill relating to general provisions regarding parks, historic areas, memorials, and recreation. House Bill 485 by Representative Moore of the 95th, Werkheiser of the 157th, Holcomb of the 81st, Mitchell of the 88th, Kennard of the 102nd, and others. A bill to repeal the imposition of the death penalty in this state. House Bill 486 by Representative Moore of the 95th, Fry of the 118th, Dollar of the 45th. A bill relating to an income tax credit for film, gaming, video, or digital production in Georgia. House Bill 487 by Representative Dreyer of the 59th, the bill related to excise tax on rooms, lodging, and accommodations. House Bill 488 by Representative Scoggins of the 14th, Kelly of the 16th, Leverett of the 33rd, Lumsden of the 12th, Gamble of the 15th, and others. A bill relating to courts. House Bill 489 by Representative Moore of the 95th, Nutwin of the 89th, Holcomb of the 81st, a bill relating to sexual offenses. House Bill 490 by Representative Hill of the 3rd and Tarvin of the 2nd, a bill to amend an act creating the Office of Commissioner of Catoosa County. House Bill 491 by Representative Blackman of the 146th, Kelly of the 16th, Taylor of the 173rd, Powell of the 32nd, Hatchett of the 150th, and others. A bill relating to elections and primaries. House Bill 492 by Representative Blackman of the 146th, Kelly of the 16th, Taylor of the 173rd, Powell of the 32nd, Hatchett of the 150th, and others. A bill relating to primaries and elections. House Bill 493 by Representative Blackman of the 146th, Kelly of the 16th, Taylor of the 173rd, Powell of the 32nd, Hatchett of the 150th, and others. A bill relating to elections and primaries. House Bill 494 by Representative Burchett of the 176th, Corbett of the 174th, Watson of the 172nd, Smith of the 18th, Williams of the 148th. A bill relating to elections and primaries. House Bill 495 by Representative Crowe of the 110th, Wiedauer of the 119th, Williams of the 145th, Hitchens of the 161st. A bill relating to general provisions regarding the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the Sexual Offender Registration Review Board. House Bill 496 by Representative Burchett of the 176th, Burns of the 159th, Rhodes of the 120th, Ridley of the 6th, Williams of the 148th. A bill relating to permits for vehicles and loads of excess weight and dimensions. House Bill 497 by Representative Estration of the 104th, a bill to amend the Official Code of Georgia annotated in furtherance of the work of the Code Revision Commission. House Bill 498 by Representative Watson of the 172nd, Dickey of the 140th, LaHood of the 175th, England of the 116th, Perkle of the 155th, a bill relating to property tax exemptions. House Bill 499 by Representative Evans of the 57th, McLean of the 100th, Buckner of the 137th, Wynn of the 89th, McLeod of the 105th, and others, a bill relating to minimum wage law. House Bill 500 by Representative Burchett of the 176th, Blackman of the 146th, Dickey of the 140th, Rhodes of the 120th, Watson of the 172nd, a bill relating to Georgia Agribusiness and Rural Jobs Act. House Bill 501 by Representative Blackman of the 146th and Roberts of the 52nd, a bill relating to primaries and elections. House Bill 502 by Representative Smith of the 18th, Estration of the 104th, Lopez of the 86th, Scoggins of the 14th, Witlinski of the 79th, a bill relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment. House Bill 503 by Representative Watson of the 172nd, Blackman of the 146th, Corbett of the 174th, Houston of the 170th, Stevens of the 164th, a bill relating to general provisions regarding sales and use taxes. House Bill 504 by Representative Williamson of the 115th, Reeves of the 34th, Burns of the 159th, Knight of the 130th, Blackman of the 146th, and others, a bill relating to the Georgia Agribusiness and Rural Jobs Act. House Bill 505 by Representative Wynn of the 89th, Beverly of the 143rd, Gilliard of the 162nd, Bodie of the 62nd, Jackson of the 64th, and others, a bill relating to justification and excuse. House Bill 506 by Representative Gamble of the 15th, Williams of the 145th, Scoggins of the 14th, Gullett of the 19th, Momptan of the 17th, and others, a bill relating to elections and primaries. House Bill 507 by Representative Williams of the 145th, Jaspers of the 11th, Crow of the 110th, Gerta of the 152nd, Scoggins of the 14th, and others, a bill relating to elections and primaries. House Bill 508 by Representative Carpenter of the 4th, Gaines of the 117th, Moore of the 95th, Reeves of the 34th, Fry of the 118th, a bill relating to selling and other trade practices. House Bill 509 by Representative Gaines of the 117th, Kelly of the 16th, Cooper of the 43rd, Ridower of the 119th, Lumsden of the 12th, and others, a bill relating to general provisions relative to group or blanket accident and sickness insurance. House Bill 510 by Representative Gaines of the 117th, Stevens of the 164th, Clark of the 147th, Houston of the 170th, Cooper of the 43rd, and others, a bill relating to imposition rate computation and exemptions from income tax. House Bill 511 by Representative Reeves of the 34th, England of the 116th, Blackman of the 146th, Williams of the 15th, Mitchell of the 88th, and others, a bill relating to conservation, natural resources, domestic relations, game and fish, General Assembly, health, motor vehicles and traffic, public officers and employees, revenue, taxation, and social services. House Bill 512 by Representative Jaspers of the 11th, Williams of the 145th, Barton of the 5th, Ridley of the 6th, Harvin of the 2nd, a bill relating to elections of primaries. House Bill 513 by Representative Benton of the 31st, a bill relating to state and other flags. House Bill 514 by Representative Hutchinson of the 107th, Cooper of the 43rd, Oliver of the 82nd, Beverly of the 143rd, Dempsey of the 13th, and others, a bill relating to insurance. House Bill 515 by Representative Wilson of the 80th, Couch of the 50th, Allen of the 40th, Schofield of the 60th, a bill relating to standards applicable to making and use of rates. House Bill 516 by Representative Mathiak of the 73rd, Bonner of the 72nd, Camp of the 131st, Knight of the 130th, Gravely of the 67th, and others, a bill relating to sale or distribution of harmful materials to minors. House Bill 517 by Representative Carson of the 46th, Knight of the 130th, Blackman of the 146th, Newton of the 123rd, Belton of the 112th, and others, a bill relating to student scholarship organizations. House Bill 518 by Representative Mitchell of the 106th, Evans of the 57th, Wilkerson of the 38th, Scott of the 76th, Lewis Ward of the 109th, and others, a bill relating to elementary and secondary education. House Bill 519 by Representative Mitchell of the 106th, Wilkerson of the 38th, Evans of the 57th, Scott of the 76th, Maynard of the 56th, and others, a bill relating to increased flexibility for local school systems. House Bill 520 by Representative Singleton of the 71st, Jones of the 25th, Martin of the 49th, Dreyer of the 59th, Camp of the 131st, and others, a bill relating to general provisions regarding promotion and deployment of broadband services. House Bill 521 by Representative Lim of the 99th, a bill relating to outdoor stewardship. House Bill 522 by Representative Lim of the 99th, a bill relating to provision applicable to the Department of Banking and Finance and financial institutions. House Bill 523 by Representative Lim of the 99th, a bill relating to general provisions relative to health and insurance. House Bill 524 by Representative Lim of the 99th, Park of the 101st, Maynard of the 56th, Thomas of the 65th, a bill relating to landlord and tenant. House Bill 525 by Representative Lim of the 99th, Maynard of the 56th, Thomas of the 65th, a bill relating to operation of funeral establishments and crematories. House Bill 526 by Representative Neal of the 74th, Gilliard of the 162nd, Walensky of the 79th, Fry of the 118th, Taylor of the 91st, a bill relating to arrests by private persons. House Bill 527 by Representative Neal of the 74th and Park of the 101st, a bill relating to imposition rate computation and exemptions from income taxes. House Bill 528 by Representative Neal of the 74th, Gilliard of the 162nd, Fry of the 118th, Bodie of the 62nd, Taylor of the 91st, a bill relating to general provisions of torts. House Bill 529 by Representative Neal of the 74th, Bodie of the 62nd, a bill relating to general provisions regarding registration and licensing of motor vehicles. House Bill 530 by Representative Knight of the 130th, Dickey of the 140th, Burns of the 159th, a bill relating to state holidays and observances. House Bill 531 by Representative Fleming of the 121st, Jones of the 47th, Powell of the 32nd, Blackman of the 146th, Smith of the 70th, and others, a bill relating to elections and primaries. House Resolution 172 by Representative Smith of the 133rd, Parsons of the 44th, resolution creating the House Study Committee on Georgia Utility Facility Safety Improvements. House Resolution 173 by Representative Lim of the 99th, a resolution proposing amendment to the Constitution so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for authorization of the Board of Trustees of the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Fund to raise revenue bonds. Senate Bill 52 by Senator Thompson of the 14th, Duggan of the 30th, Kennedy of the 18th, Cowsert of the 46th, Mullis of the 53rd, and others, bill relating to selling and other trade practices. Senate Bill 81 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, Miller of the 49th, Anderson of the 43rd, Duggan of the 30th, Walker of the 3rd of the 20th, and others, bill relating to the Office of College and Career Transitions and Powers and Duties. Senate Bill 88 by Senator Goodman of the 8th, Jackson of the 2nd, Tipton of the 37th, Sims of the 12th, Burns of the 23rd, and others, a bill relating to elementary and secondary education. 3 second readers.
Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Representative Mandy Ballinger, the 23rd District, Chairman of the Committee on Juvenile Justice, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Juvenile Justice has sat under consideration the following bills of the House and instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 272 do pass by committee substitute. House Bill 274 do pass by committee substitute. House Bill 442 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Mandy Ballinger, the 23rd District, Chairman. Representative Powell, the 32nd District, Chairman of the Committee on Regulated Industries, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Regulated Industries has had under consideration the following bills of the House and instructed me to report the same back to the House following recommendations. House Bill 34 do pass by substitute. House Bill 395 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Powell of the 32nd District, Chairman. Representative Rick Jaspers of the 11th District, Chairman of the Committee on Transportation, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Transportation has had under consideration the following resolution of the House. Instructed me to report the same back to the House following recommendation. House Resolution 119 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Rick Jaspers of the 11th District, Chairman. Representative Shaw Blackman of the 146th District, Chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Ways and Means has had under consideration the following bill of the House and instructed me to report the same back to the House following recommendations. House Bill 63 do pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Shaw Blackman of the 146th District, Chairman. That completes the reading of the reports of standing committees.
The House is moving on to morning orders. Would all members take their seats and take all conversations to the anteroom? The chair recognizes Speaker Ralston for a morning order.
I need to come down here more often, learn how to use this, I guess. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let me say, first of all, I'm honored to be joined up here by Chairman Eddie Lumsden. We're here to talk about a friend of both of us and a constituent of his. In one guy's humble opinion, he was the greatest lawyer to set foot in a courtroom in the history of our state. Shrewd, cunning, brilliant, and a gifted orator. To earlier generations of Georgia lawyers, he was what the profession was all about. But the quality that set Bobby Lee Cook above all others was his credibility. He had the respect and trust of judges and adversaries, but it was his credibility with jurors that made him special. Juries trusted him and believed that when he said it, it had to be true. A fierce competitor in the courtroom, he was always the epitome of a gentleman. To those with whom he clashed, he was civil and respectful. And then he would rip your heart out before you saw it coming. He was, as former Governor Roy Barnes said over the weekend, larger than life. He tried cases all over Georgia and beyond. His fame extended across the nation, but he was and remained always a son of Somerville and Chattooga County. And when he passed Thursday night, he was on top of the mountain in Chattooga County. Few remember that he served in this body and he served across the hall because he was above all a champion among lawyers. But I tell you, for all of his greatness, he had one major character flaw. He was an unrepentant, hardcore, dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. And I suspect he was that way until the Lord called him home Thursday night. He and I often joked about how our mountain traditions may have led us to different parties, but that it ultimately brought us back to a common ground. I last visited with him about 2 years ago at any length, and we had a good visit. He said, I remember one thing he said, be proud of your independent streak. It is what marks a mountain man. And I will remember that advice and other conversations we had, and I will cherish the times that I watched and listened as he and my dad argued good-naturedly, because you could do that at one point in our history about politics. And they would tell stories on and on and on and on. We will remember Bobby Lee Cook of Somerville as perhaps Georgia's greatest lawyer, but we should also celebrate his devotion to the Constitution. His clients over the years could be described charitably as a rogues gallery, but he believed every provision in our Constitution was important and applied to all of us equally. In his mind, our justice system served not only to keep us safe, but to keep us free. They will be telling Bobby Lee Cook stories for generations. We just won't know if they were true, because we didn't know if they were true during his lifetime. But this we will know. He was a lion, a giant, and he truly left his footprint on this state. Rest in peace, my friend. Madam Speaker, if we could have a moment of silence to reflect upon his life. Thank you very much.
The chair recognizes Chairman Parsons for morning order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It'd be hard to follow that, but I do want to tell you about a wonderful lady. This is my contribution to Black History Month. Probably most people wouldn't know this, but I actually attended and graduated from a historically black university. Black College is a university now, and there were so many people there, so many people in the faculty and administration that I have very fond memories of, but there's one in particular, and I want her to be the focus of this morning. Her name was Ellen Capiz. Ellen Hilda Capiz was born in Halifax County, Virginia. She and her sisters were introduced early in life to Latin, Greek, French, and German. Languages became one of her passions. Later, she would learn Chinese. She earned degrees in Latin and Greek at Howard University, where she taught for several years. Later, she received her master's degree in history from Howard University and carried out her further postgraduate work at the University of Chicago in Chinese culture and history, and later at the Far East Institute in St. Paul, Minnesota. Mrs. Capiz taught at the University of the Philippines and later retired as professor of history at West Virginia State College, where I attended, and where she established the Chinese Studies program. She was an active member of the Family Life Action Committee, which sponsored educational programs for local citizens. She was secretary of the Halifax County Crime Prevention Council, past president of the Halifax South Boston Retired Teachers Association, and past president of the Charleston, West Virginia branch of the American Association of University Women. She became a role model, and following retirement, she spent 20 years of service to her community in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Though many awards and honors found her way to her, she was extremely modest, a perfectionist, a lifelong habit. She asked much of herself and those working with her. She was appointed to the board of the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities and Public Policy by former Governor Charles Robb. It's impossible to count the many lives she touched in her lifetime, and I was one of them. One can be sure that if any of her students followed her path, she would be pleased and smile and say, I was just a volunteer. She was a wonderful lady, and I can tell you this. I took European history and then Eastern history, Chinese history, from her class. And I can tell you anything and everything that I know about China, I learned from her class, and it was totally, what she taught was totally non-political. It was about the culture and about the people. She was a great lady, and even more than that, she was a great Christian lady, Mrs. Ellen Capiz. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Camp for a morning order.
Good morning. I wanted to speak this morning of a living member of Black history. Her name is Evelyn Thompson. She is the first African-American female postmaster in Concord, Georgia. She is a dear soul. She is professional. She has inspired many to understand that being of service to others in her capacity is really being a giant of strength. And I'm thankful for her every single day. I'm thankful for the example she sets for other women and men, and I'm thankful for that. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Kennard for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, for this moment to honor my mother who passed this last Thursday evening. Many claim to have the best mother ever. I actually have the exclusive on that. She is absolutely was the best. This is a picture of she and I at my oldest daughter's wedding, mother-son dance. Patricia Louise Kennard was a lifelong Georgian, born and raised in Paulding County, Dallas, Georgia. She and my father were married there and then moved to Gwinnett County, where my sister and I were raised, and I still live. The last several years, she struggled with Alzheimer's and cancer, but her death is not tragic. She lived well, a wonderful, full, and blessed life with all the important things. She was married to the love of her life, William Kennard, for just shy of 60 years. She was deeply loved by her children and 5 grandchildren. She was a Christ-like, loving, and generous person who brightened up any room that she entered. My mom is the singular most influential person in my life, shaping my worldview, and much of what I do and how I conduct myself both personally and professionally is motivated by her. Mom taught me how to love God, love people, to live with empathy. She preached to whom much is given, much is required. I want to thank you for your prayers, and especially the prayers for my dad, whose heart is broken, of course. He has been her caregiver and taken extraordinary care of her every step of the way till the very end. This house has extended much kindness to me over the last few days, and it has meant the world to me. I'm grateful, Speaker Ralston, for your timely call and for the many members who reached out to me over the weekend. And thank you for allowing this moment of silence in her honor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Mom, I love you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Belton for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate the 289th birthday of the father of our nation, George Washington. Farmer, soldier, patriot, statesman. George Washington fought in 2 wars, was nearly gunned down countless times. He had 2 horses shot underneath him in one battle alone, his hat and coat riddled with bullet holes. George Washington fought over 20 battles. He lost almost all of them. But he understood that as long as he kept his army alive, he could win our nation's freedom. The British called him the Old Fox. Cornwallis, commander of the most elite army in the entire planet, bragged that he would bag him in the morning. But it was Washington who bagged Cornwallis of the very complicated tri-nation quad army land and sea victory at Yorktown. Washington didn't write a single word of the Constitution, but his towering leadership presided over the impossibly divided delegates. leading to the great compromises that created the single most important document in history. Washington's leadership as a president of the United States created endless precedences, setting a sterling example that all future presidents should lead with a servant's heart. But his decision to step down after 2 terms was his greatest achievement of all. When King George III of England heard what he had done, he called him the greatest man in the world. Yet this giant was so humble that in his farewell address, he actually apologized, saying, "I'm too sensible of my defects not to think it probable that I may have committed many errors." He beseeched the Almighty and his countrymen to look upon his, and I quote, "incompetent abilities with indulgence." After almost 300 years, George Washington remains first in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the Dean of the House, Dean Smyrie, for a morning order.
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, I don't usually do many morning orders, but I got a call this weekend from the family of John Lewis. And yesterday, I spoke at Gordon State College, and I called my friend, Representative David Knight. I was in Barnesville, and they had a lecture series, and John Lewis was the subject of my lecture. Yesterday was his 81st birthday, and John Lewis lying state here in the Capitol back in July of 2020, and yesterday, February 21st, was his 81st birthday, and I want to commend the gentleman, Representative Al Williams from the 168th, and Speaker Ralston, and all the members that have signed on, both houses, both aisles, both leaders have signed on to the resolution creating a commission so that John Lewis statue would be in Statutory Hall in our U.S. Capitol. So today I want to come on behalf of the family and say thank you, and how much appreciative they are of that. And I talked to Representative Williams this morning, and sooner than later we're going to be speaking with the family. But I did want to make that acknowledgement and say happy birthday to John Lewis. Rest in peace. He was a great warrior and a great American and a great Georgian, although he born in Alabama, outside of Troy, Alabama. So thank you very much for this moment, Mr. Speaker. We just want to wish John Lewis a happy 81st birthday. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Davis for a morning order.
February is Black History Month. So what is Black history? Well, let's start off with the Civil War. And one courageous Black woman, and the woman I'm talking about is Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was born into slavery, but oh, she did not let that hold her back. She freed herself from that slavery, only to go back and free over 70 slaves through the Underground Railroad. She was a spy for the Union Army, and later an activist for women's suffrage movement. See, Harriet Tubman made history, and created and delivered a tomorrow for us to live. And now we go on to the Civil Rights Movement, and oh, another courageous woman. This is a white woman. Her name is Viola Liuzzo. Viola Liuzzo is a 39-year-old wife and mother of 5 children that, after witnessing the horrific actions that were going on in Alabama, left her family in Detroit and traveled to Alabama to march with Martin Luther King. She was murdered March 25th, 1965. Why? Because she could see past color. and gave black demonstrators a ride from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. See, Viola Liuzzo made history that delivered a tomorrow worth living. So I stand here during Black History Month in a building that people who look like me were not even allowed to serve in. And I'm going to say a prayer for everyone that's in here. And my prayer is that we, collectively or individually, will make history that will deliver a tomorrow that is worth living. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Holly for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I ask that we stand in reflection of the innocent lives lost, civilians slaughtered, half a world away, and refugees displaced in East Africa. A day after our nation enjoyed its November election, war erupted in the Horn of Africa, an Ethiopian civil war where the Tigrayan people have been affected. Approximately around 60,000 are now refugees, and nearby country of Eritrea has entered that struggle, and it is likely to escalate into a humanitarian crisis. In Georgia, as our Savannah port is expanding with rich opportunities on trade routes, including those in the Red Sea, it is becoming necessary for us to follow in the footsteps of Georgia's son, our 39th President, Jimmy Carter, and initiate local efforts to demand an end to war, to foster diplomacy, and renewed commercial progress as we stand with the families of the affected Africans now living here in our state. At this time, please let us respect them with a moment of silence. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Hughley for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. This is Black History Month, and one of the reasons why we celebrate Black history is oftentimes our heroes are left out. And so this morning I rise to congratulate the Muskogee County School District for recognizing Mary Lee Bussey. You see, in segregated schools, they were called supervisors, and she was the supervisor for the segregated schools of Muskogee County. And now they are going to honor her and give her her rightful title of superintendent, and they have commissioned her portrait to be done, and her picture will be hung among the other superintendents, the leaders of the Muskogee County School District. I had the pleasure of knowing Miss Mary Lee Bussey. She was one of my customers at State Farm. She was my soror in Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and my sister in Lincoln. She was a gracious lady who always worked hard for her community. You could never be more generous than Mary Lee Bussey. And I'm honored that we're going to rectify this omission in history, and she will be recognized as the superintendent that she was. So thank you to the Muskogee County School District, and let us remember Mary Lee Bussey on today.
Okay, we have far exceeded the 20-minute limit for morning orders. Those that didn't get reached today, we will put on for tomorrow. We are now going on to the rules calendar. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 307.
House Bill 307 by Representative Cooper, the 43rd, and others to be entitled an act to amend Article in Chapter 24 of Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance generally so as to revise the Georgia Telehealth Act. This bill having referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I bring to you the House Bill 307. This is a telehealth bill. If there can be any possible thing that is good out of this pandemic, and I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek, it will be the fact that we probably knocked 10 years off the time it would normally have taken for patients to get used to telemedicine medicine and having the convenience of having a chat with their doctor by Zoom instead of an in-person meeting. Much of the telehealth medicine that has been practiced for the last year has happened because of the emergency powers of our governor and release of some restrictions by CMS. And people have found it to be very beneficial. So if we go off those emergency powers without House Bill 307, many of those forms of dealing with patients in this new form would disappear. So what this does is puts most of those privileges that we have had in the new innovations into our law so that they will continue after the pandemic. Telemedicine is so convenient for patients. And there's one place it's especially good, and that is dealing with patients with mental health problems. During the pandemic, we have seen a significant rise in suicides, in drug and alcohol abuse, in family violence, child violence. And because we are so lacking in people and physicians and psychologists and people that deliver our mental health services across the state, telemedicine is one of the ways that we can expand those services, especially into our rural areas, and especially to people who may not have the ability to go to a DFACS office or have the ability to have telecommunications. One of the things that this bill does is says that psychiatrists and the people in the mental health field can use the telephone to deliver the services. So, Mr. Speaker, if there are no questions, I will ask for favorable consideration of House Bill 307. And if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You do have a question if you care to yield.
I will yield, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Jasmine Clark in the gallery.
Thank you, Mr.
To your
Speaker.
left.
Does the gentlelady yield?
I do.
So I had a constituent contact me and say that when they use telehealth, there was restrictions on their ability to get certain types of prescriptions through telehealth. Does this bill address that issue?
No, it really doesn't, because those restrictions are federal with CMS currently, and we have to abide by those. And so hopefully they are looking to review how they deal with prescription orders through telemedicine, and hopefully that will change going forward.
Thank you for bringing this bill.
Thank you.
You have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 307. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 307. The ayes are 158, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 362.
House Bill 362 by Representative Rhodes, the 120th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 12.2.2 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to Environmental Protection Division, Environmental Advisory Council, duties of the council, and its members and directors. This bill having referred to the Committee on Game, Fish, and Parks. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes the chair of the Game, Fish, and Parks Committee, Chairman Trey Rhodes, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have before you today the committee sub for House Bill 362. This legislation does 5 simple things. It codifies the rules and regs passed by the DNR board this past year. It adds more species to the black bass and trout categories. It adds a new caliber to our primitive weapon category, and it authorizes the department to give custom deer bag limits to our DMAP participants, to those people that have those properties. And it also allows and makes legal the use of minnow traps in our freshwaters, just as we allow our anglers to do in our salt waters. It creates uniformity across the state. That, Mr. Speaker, is this bill, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You do not have any questions.
I ask for your green vote. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 362. The ayes are 158, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 150.
House Bill 150 by Representative Williamson to the 115th and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 46 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to prohibit governmental entities from adopting any policy that prohibits the connection or reconnection of any utility service. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Williamson to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I bring before you today for your consideration House Bill 150 by committee substitute LC 364621S. This bill, quite simply, will protect citizens' rights to choose the energy fuel choice that best fits their budgets. It prohibits local governments from denying fuel service based solely on the type or source of the energy being provided by the utility company. Now I want to stress that this is not happening in Georgia, and that both the Georgia Municipal Association as well as the Association of County Commissioners remain neutral on the measure. Furthermore, it comes with no objection from the MEAG cities, which are called the Municipal Elected Authority Cities of Georgia, nor any objection from the Municipal Gas Association Cities of Georgia. So the logical question to ask is, why do we need this measure? Well, what's happening is in some areas of our country, well-meaning local governments have started enacting ordinances banning connections and furthermore reconnections to utility energy sources based solely on the type or the source of the energy being offered. This is being done in attempts to help their communities realize net zero carbon goals. The current fuel choices being singled out just happen to be natural gas and propane products. But in the future, think about it, it could also include the sources of electricity production as well. For example, such as mandating only that certain renewable energies be used, all of which, and we all know this, all of which have their own unique environmental challenges. Or it could prohibit energy produced by nuclear production, even though the environmental community at large is sort of divided on that question as far as whether or not that's a clean energy. Furthermore, these bans ignore the fact that natural gas and propane gas are, in fact, low-cost, efficient, clean-burning fuels that have actually led the charge in helping reduce greenhouse emissions as they have replaced less efficient fuels, especially in the production of electricity. House Bill 150 gives Georgians a resilient path for assuring the lowest possible energy pricing in their homes and businesses. It assures consumers freedom of choice and lets the free market work to keep energy pricing low. This competition helps every Georgian, especially our most economically vulnerable citizens on limited incomes. Furthermore, it protects our hospitality industry, which has historically depended on fuel choice, especially our restaurants who have been extremely hard hit during this pandemic. This is why this bill is supported by the Georgia Restaurant Association and the Georgia Hotel and Lodging Association. Fuel choice helps our farmers, keeps their business inputs low, which helps hold down our food costs. That's why it's endorsed by the Georgia Poultry Association, Georgia Farm Bureau, and the Georgia Agribusiness Council. It protects our jobs from our very largest industries to our especially vulnerable small employers. That's why it's endorsed by the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the Georgia Association of Manufacturers, the Georgia Mining Association, the Georgia Contractors Association, and the Georgia Economic Developers Association. Furthermore, it protects the land and resale values of our homes and businesses. That's why it's endorsed by the Georgia Realtors Association, the Georgia Home Builders Association, and the Council for Quality Growth. All these are fantastic organizations representing almost 11 million Georgians, and we all have friends in each one of these organizations. All of them are in favor of this measure. During our committee hearings, there was a passionate objection alleging that this bill infringes on local government's authority. Home rule only affects the ability of the General Assembly to pass local laws, which this measure is not doing. This bill is a matter of general law, and it protects fuel choice for Georgians. Another objection is global warming concerns, and again, natural gas in particular has been a fantastic tool in helping to reduce Georgia's energy production carbon footprint. Again, the Georgia Municipal Association as well as ACCG have not objected and remain neutral on the bill. However, if communities start banning fuel choice, there will be unintended economic consequences. For example, older homes that were designed to be heated by natural gas, although these homes are older, they have perfectly safe wiring systems, and the electrical panels were not designed to carry the load for electric heat sources. Denying natural gas services and forcing expensive and unnecessary wiring upgrades will be a huge financial burden to Georgia citizens. Also, many citizens choose to heat one room at a time. All of us have friends and family that do this. And natural gas space heaters are a very economical way of doing it. In closing, I want to point out that nothing in this measure precludes local governments from incentivizing their citizens to make fuel choices at the leadership or direction of the local governments. There's just like any local government has economic development tools at their disposal, similar measures could be taken to help protect the wallets of their citizens and not pay for fuel choices on the backs of ratepayers. Let it come out of the revenues that the city already has and to incentivize these types of behaviors. Mr. Speaker, that's the bill. I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any. If not, I'll love to yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, sir, I do.
Chair recognizes Chairman Petrie to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Representative, is it not true that this bill in no way encumbers renewable energy from expanding in this state?
That is correct.
And is it not true that this bill really is about freedom, the freedom of consumers to choose any type of energy they want, to include renewable energy sources that I very strongly support? Is that not true?
That is correct. And a footnote on that is that competition drives prices lower. And just as we've seen in, for example, our electric car market, that right now, battery production facilities that move in the U.S. We're driving down the cost. We can compete with other foreign governments on producing these same type of technologies here at a lower price point, and the only thing that drives that is competition. Good question.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Carpenter to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Representative Williamson, do you cook eggs?
Every morning.
Have you ever tried cooking eggs on an electric stove?
Unfortunately, I'm having to do that in Atlanta when I'm here.
That's funny. This bill would put such a burden on restaurants. I'm not even sure that the Waffle House would even exist if we didn't pass this bill. Natural gas is important for my industry and for all restaurateurs. So I appreciate you bringing this measure, and we're all for local control until locals get out of control. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
I'll yield for one more, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tarvin to your right for a question.
Gentleman yield.
Happy to yield to my friend from Northwest Georgia.
Being in the home building business in my life, people are looking for homes on natural gas where there's a pipeline. What would this do if I had a home in a city or town that decided not to allow this, and I got ready to sell my home, and they had passed this law? Would the buyer be able to rehook to that gas?
Again, this has not happened in Georgia, but this is basically being preemptive. This bill would preclude the ability to not reconnect. So you're correct. If an ordinance were passed that stopped the connection or reconnection, in this example, natural gas, then it would severely impact the resale value of that home.
Gentleman, further yield.
One more.
That would be that would drive down the price of my home because it was not as attractive to somebody with lower heating costs.
That is correct. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the well and ask for your the body's favorable consideration.
Gentleman has yielded the well. We have others that wish to be heard on the measure. Chair recognizes Representative Dreyer to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to House Bill 150. I'm sure a lot of you have been to Tybee Island. Right there on Butler Street a few years ago, I noticed a signpost that goes straight up, and it shows where sea level rise will impact Tybee Island. At 3 feet, about half of the island is underwater. So that would include my friend's business, Ronnie at Sea Kayak, Georgia. Another time when I was on a trip there, I took my 4-year-old kayak in on that dock behind the Crab Shack. I think a few of you have been there. And we're kayaking out, and he was 4 at the time, a dolphin crested right in front of our kayak. That business would be gone at 3 feet of sea level rise. At 7 feet, we've lost Tybee Island and a lot of our other barrier islands. One of my goals is to visit each of the barrier islands with my kids. They may not be there. Already, if you're going from Brunswick to St. Simons and you take a right from Glen Avenue onto the causeway during a supermoon, you've got water flooded in the right turn lane. If we do nothing about carbon emissions, by 2100 we'll have 8.2 feet of sea level rise. What I have to think about when I'm at the beach is that my kids, if they choose to have children, likely won't be able to take their kids to the same beaches I've taken them to. And that is cause for serious concern. But my kids will ultimately be okay because of the privileges they have. But folks that aren't so advantaged, folks that are disadvantaged, grew up in historically poor areas, are going to feel the brunt. The Gullah Geechee come to mind on Sapelo Island, who I've sat with over time. That island would be gone. And that's not to mention the threat of more extreme weather. Because of climate change, oceans are warmer and there are more hurricanes and more intense hurricanes. By 2050, Savannah is at risk of flooding every year for what once was considered a 100-year flood. And we don't talk about the record cold this past week. How does that work with climate change? Well, if you look at the jet stream that flows through the northern part of our country, that actually serves to insulate the Arctic air. That was weakened because of climate change. The Arctic air has come down, setting record-setting temperatures, but what happens on the other side? This past week, the Arctic in certain places was 57 degrees above where it normally is this time. From wildfires to record temperatures to storms to flooding, we're already seeing the first effects of climate change. And this is caused by CO2 in the atmosphere. It's beyond debate. I've heard earlier that natural gas is cleaner. That ER is doing a whole lot of work because natural gas emissions are somewhere between 50 to 80% as dirty as coal. Natural gas is now the largest contributor to greenhouse gases in the world. It's not sustainable long term. And no one's doing this. And what we're coming up with is the worst case scenario. They're going to ban restaurants from using natural gas. They're going to stop somebody from reconnecting. Those things can easily be solved, but that's not what this bill does. This bill says this bill says you have to permit new natural gas infrastructure 20, 30 years down the road. If a local government wants to be innovative 15 years from now, when renewables are affordable, reliable, and readily accessible, we are prohibiting them from doing that. And when you build new natural gas infrastructure 15 years from now, it's going to take 30 years to get your return on this. I don't know why we're prejudicing cities and counties 15, 20 years down the road with something today that may happen. I spoke about my children and my grandchildren. After the committee meeting, when I mentioned that, the bill sponsor said, well, I care about my children and grandchildren too. And I believe that. He's a good man. But the thing is, we're making decisions today that will affect them. They're going to have to live with our decisions today. And they're depending on us to be their voice. I'm casting my vote today for my kids, Henry and Leo. And I'm casting my vote today for other kids that are in Georgia and that will come to Georgia and that will be born in Georgia. And I'm voting no. And I'm joining various city leaders urging us to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Okay. We have a minority report. And then we have a request for the chairman's time, both of which are under rule 20 minutes each. Chair recognizes to present the minority report Representative Drenner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the arguments that have been presented illustrate that there is, from my perspective, a tipping point between the climate of change and the change of climate. First, it's important to note that all local governments are ultimately subject to state control. Only the federal government and state governments have any constitutional authority. All cities, counties, school districts, and other forms of local government wield power at the discretion of the federal government, or more often, their state. So from a legal standpoint, state preemption may be acceptable, but used judiciously. House Bill 150 is a result of 5 out of 535 governments that have passed publicly supported resolutions committing to a transition to clean energy, or 0.9% of local governments in Georgia. One of the arguments for this measure is that the potential for stranded costs associated with infrastructure. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Passing a resolution to move towards something is different from doing it. Don't you have to have the technology to provide the service before you can discontinue the use of another resource? This bill's sole premise is based on hypotheticals, not substantive policy changes. As the author stated, this hasn't happened in Georgia. There are good reasons for states to allow local governments to implement their own policies. City officials and residents know what is important to them and often have a better understanding of how to achieve their goals. The importance of local knowledge in a good decision-making is one reason why state officials should defer to local governments. Another reason is that by allowing local governments to implement different policies, we get a better understanding of what works and what does not. Successful policies that result from experimentation at the local level can then filter up to the state level, while unsuccessful policies can be discarded before they are imposed on an entire state. Different local policies allow people to choose the government that is best for them. In other words, people can vote with their feet. If all local policies were imposed on cities by state governments, there would be far less variety and many people would be worse off due to the lack of choices. This bill is about choice. It's about the heavy hand of a state telling 5 governments that their resolution somehow is going to impact restaurants, bars. It's a preemption bill. In closing, let me say this. Government intrusion into the marketplace distorts the efficiency with which a competitive market economy can allocate society's resources. And it creates something called a market failure. Market failures warrant government intervention. A market failure occurs when the private market is not efficient. House Bill 150 highlights one such failure, and that is the existence of monopolies. The utilities referred to in 150 are monopolies. And the role of government with regard to a monopoly is to ensure that the public is treated fairly. This bill does not treat the public fairly. This bill distorts the economy, leading to less economic growth and therefore decreased quality of life for future generations. Any preemption bill, state intervention should always be exercised with caution, and it should be done to promote rather than hinder economic freedom. I ask you to vote no. We cannot stop technology today on a hypothetical. This is a bad bill, and it sets a bad precedent. I ask you to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Okay, we're going on now to the chairman's time. Chair recognizes Chairman Parsons, the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Speaker Ralston. I'm going to be brief. I could actually, I think, talk about this for a long time, but I'm not going to. I know we have some other people that want to speak on it, and they probably would be better to speak on it than I would anyway. But I do want to say a couple things. First of all, it is a good bill, and there's nothing wrong with the bill whatsoever. But this bill actually went through two subcommittees. It went to a subcommittee 2 times, I should say, and the full committee. It's been thoroughly vetted. It was said a few minutes ago that we need to treat the public fairly. I think that I agree with that, but it's not to treat the public fairly on providing electricity is not through allowing the cities to set portfolios. It's allowing the people to do that. And I think long term, what we need to have is that some demand side control on the electricity that you're provided, but not letting cities set these things. And then I think the only thing I'm going to have to say about this after that is that I don't know what this would do to the grid. I want you to look down at Texas right now, what they've been going through, and a lot of their problems actually relates to the grid. Now, it relates to really bad, unexpected weather, but it also relates to the grid. I fear that what these cities want to do would unbalance the grid so badly that we could have chaos without bad weather. The grid has to be balanced, and that's what Georgia Power and our power suppliers do. They spend a lot of time on that, and there's ways to do that. They have engineers that do that. To provide these cities to do that on their own, I think could create some chaos. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I want to yield the remainder of the chairman's time to the author of the bill, Representative Williams, and to Representative Chairman Chuck Martin. And with that, I'll yield the way.
Yeah, you may do that. Who's going first? Representative
Williamson.
Chair recognizes Representative Williamson for some portion of the chairman's time.
Mr. Speaker, if Chairman Martin doesn't mind, I'd like to wrap it up, but I'll leave that to Chairman Martin. But one of the gentlemen mentioned very passionately about love of our coast, the love of Georgia, and I just can't let this go without saying I'm a father of 4 Eagle Scout sons. I've spent time on every one of those islands, with the exception of St. Catharines, hiking and camping with the sons. My sons. I've spent innumerable hours out there. I have a deep love for our coast. We've got to meet Miss West on Ossabaw Island. Had numerous trips out there. It's special, and I want nothing to happen to our beautiful. I want to say we have 40% of the coastal marshes on the whole eastern seaboard. It's a fantastic jewel. But just like the Bible talks about in Ecclesiastes, there's a season and a rhythm and a time to get things done. And now's not the time to take away consumers' choice. We talked about what the local governments can do, but you're taking away consumers' choice in this instance. I want to reiterate that not only is this a bipartisan bill, nothing precludes local governments from incentivizing your citizens towards the energy policies you deem best for your local citizenry. I did hear the speaker mention that if you don't like what the city's doing, you can vote with your feet. But I would remind the commentator on that aspect that if you really don't like it and you leave your home and your property in the city from which you're fleeing, the economic loss you're going to take on that piece of property, if you can no longer sell that home to be reconnected to a fuel choice of the previously being used, that's going to take a hit to the wallet. So with that being said, Mr. Speaker, I think the body's heard enough. I'd love to call the question and yield the well. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 150 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 150. The ayes are 103, the nays are 62. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 98.
House Bill 98 by Representative Lumsden of the 12th and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to state government so as to provide conditions for meetings and public hearings to be held by teleconference in emergency conditions. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Government Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by Rules Committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lumsden to present the bill.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, I bring to you House Bill 98 by committee substitute, a bill that comes as a request of the Georgia Municipal Association and is fully supported by the Association of County Commissioners. This bill sets the conditions for state agencies, including local governments, to hold meetings and hearings during a declared emergency via teleconference. This legislation would authorize cities and counties to hold virtual public hearings in declared emergencies. Mr. Speaker, that is the bill. I would appreciate your support. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You do not have any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate
Is
your
there
support.
any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 98. The ayes are 162, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 156.
House Bill 156 by Representative Parsons of the 44th and others to be entitled an act to amend Titles 38 and 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to military, emergency management, and veteran affairs and state government respectively so as to facilitate the sharing of information and reporting of cyber attacks. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by Rules Committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Parsons to present the bill.
Thank you, Speaker Ralston. House Bill 156 is actually a pretty simple proposition. It would set up a process for what we're calling agencies, which literally are agencies of the state and of the local governments, to provide information, report information to the Georgia Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security on cyber attacks. It sets up that process. It gives the director the ability to establish rules and regulations relating to that. It also sets up just a slightly different process for utilities to provide information to the Director of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. That basically is the same information that they provide to the federal government, unless there is some federal law that prevents that from being provided to the state, or if there's some federal agency that has some regulation or some rule against that happening. But as you know, our counties, GMA came to me with a proposition for this almost 2 years ago because they were concerned getting hit by these cyber attacks where there's ransom demands, and even the sheriff's departments in the state, law enforcement all over the state have gotten these things. I would say, I don't ever want to say anything's impossible, but apparently it is impossible to track these things back. A lot of these, I would say most of these attacks come from Eastern Europe someplace. And they're routed through servers all over the world until they finally hit the location that they could even come through an IP address of yours. I mean, they do that sometimes. The last known IP address will be some innocent person because they've been able to get into that. And so it's costing our taxpayers a lot of money. And this is a way to help stop that, and it needs to be done. Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to answer any questions if there are any. If not, I would ask your favorable consideration of House Bill 156.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, sir, I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Jasmine Clark in the gallery to your left.
Over here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
So what are the agencies, once they get this information, what is the plan? What are they going to do with the information that they get? Like, what's the next step in this process?
Well, I think what you're asking relates to once the information is actually given to the director of the Department of Emergency Services and Homeland Security, then that will depend upon the rules and regulations. But the aim of it is to actually work with GTA and the agencies in the state and their contacts to provide the technical assistance to address the issue concerned with the attack.
Thank you.
You do not appear to have any further questions.
Thank you, Speaker. And again, I would ask your favorable consideration of House Bill 156. Thank you. I yield the will.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to withdrawing this committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 156. The ayes are 163, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 268.
House Bill 268 by Representative Werkheiser, the 157th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 28 of Title 43 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to occupational therapists, so as to revise licensing provisions. This bill then referred to the Committee on Regulated Industries. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Werkheiser to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 268 authorizes Georgia to participate in the Occupational Therapy License Compact. This is not a new idea. We've had at least 5 of these bills, and I think every one of them has been chaired by, or has been sponsored by Chairman Belton, and I appreciate his help on this one. In fact, I think he's got 2 more for this year. But this is for occupational therapy therapists. It does not kick in until there are 10 states, but there are 11 states right now that have pending legislation. This will help occupational therapists basically in 3 different ways. It's for rural folks to get more accessibility, and then as we talked about through Chairman Cooper's bill this morning through telehealth. And then thirdly, for our military who, because we have so many bases in Georgia, a lot of times they transfer in their spouses who's gone through a rigorous process of getting their license, will now be able to be licensed in Georgia as long as they meet the requirements that are current and then have a GBI background check. That's the bill, and I'll stand for any questions if there are any.
You do not have any questions.
I appreciate that, and I would ask for your favorable support on House Bill 268.
Chair recognizes Representative Belton to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very, very brief. The Georgia Chamber of Commerce wrote a nice letter supporting this bill. And again, this is directly requested by the Pentagon so that the spouses, especially of the military, can work in and out of Georgia. It's not just for the military, but it does help military spouses quite a bit. The military said that they have 2 things they're concerned about, where they're going to put their money in their military presence, and that is K-12 education and spousal licensure. I hope you'll support this bill.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 268. The ayes are 163. The nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 273.
House Bill 273 by Representative Ballinger, the 23rd, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 4 of Title 3 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to local authorization and regulations for manufacture, distribution, and packet sales of distilled spirits. This bill having referred to the Committee on Regulated Industries. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Ballinger to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring before you a very simple bill. What this bill does is, right now, in order to have a liquor referendum on the ballot, you have to have 35% signature. This would allow a referendum on the ballot on the vote of either the city council or the county government. It would just, and they could still do the signatures if they want, but it also offers them the alternative of the vote of the council or the commission. I'll be happy to stand for any questions.
Do you yield for a question?
I certainly do.
Chair recognizes Representative Byrd up in the gallery in about the center lane.
Yes.
Does the lady yield?
Sure.
Is it not true that this bill would open the door for package stores on every corner in your district and community?
This would allow for local control, whether or not they have a referendum, and so it would be up to the local control.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Anulowicz to your left for a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Is it not true that when you are in local government on a city council, a county commission, you typically have to approve the privilege license for any kind of package stores, and there are pretty intense zoning requirements as well?
That is correct. And I think the gentlelady knows of what she speaks, having spent some time on the city council.
10 years, actually. Yes, thank you.
Do you further yield?
I'll yield for one more, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Thomas to your left in the gallery.
Does the lady yield?
Certainly due to my fellow delegation member from Cherokee County.
Is it true that you and I, both the representatives for the city of Canton, was approached in support of this bill by the city council?
Yes, it's very much a local bill for me. My city actually has a tequila maker, a kind of a boutique tequila maker, and they can't sell their products. So I was actually approached by my hometown to carry the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, with that, I believe I will yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration of this measure. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 273, the ayes are 142, the nays are 24. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 234.
House Bill 234 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to insurance so as to provide an option for self-funded health care plans. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Special Committee on Quality Health Care. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hawkins to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, Georgia adopted one of the most comprehensive surprise billing acts in this country, protecting patients from unknown large medical bills, especially those bills coming from emergency and non-emergency treatment. This past December, federal legislation was placed into the Omnibus Spending Act. It does defer to states with comprehensive surprise billing, so our bill will stand. But states do not have the authority to require self-funded plans. These are the employer self-funded plans to comply with state laws or regulation by our insurance commissioner. But at present, states are not prohibited from enacting legislation which allows such health care plans to voluntarily agree to comply to the Surprise Billing Act. Thus, passing the bill last year allows us to take another bite of the apple this year and voluntarily by the employers help approximately 60% of the people that were not included in last year's bill. Mr. Speaker, that is the bill, and I will yield any questions.
You do not appear to have any questions.
I ask for your favorable support of this bill, HB 234.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill. The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 234. The ayes are 165, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. House Bill 210 will be postponed to the next legislative day. House Bill 245 will be postponed until the next legislative day. House Bill 342 will be postponed until the next legislative day. House Bill 354 will be postponed until the next legislative day. The clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
Recognizing Georgia School Nutrition Association professionals for their work in serving meals to Georgia students. Congratulating Effingham Veterans Park. Congratulating and commending the law office of Keith R. Miles, LLC. Recognizing and commending Tyler Perry. Recognizing the Johns Creek Arts Center for 25 years for providing affordable, high-quality art education to the residents of North Fulton and surrounding communities. And for other purposes, that completes the reading of the privilege resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privilege resolutions? The chair hears none. The resolutions are adopted. If you have signed up for an announcement, be making your way to the front of the chamber. Chair recognizes Chairman Tarvin for an announcement.
Insurance, Property and Casualty Subcommittee will meet today in room 506 at 3 o'clock. 506, 3 p.m., Property and Casualty Subcommittee.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hatchett for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Majority Caucus will meet upon adjournment. Floyd Room, Twin Towers, upon adjournment.
Chair recognizes Chairman Mitchell, Chairman Billy Mitchell, for an announcement.
Appreciate your presence, Mr. Speaker. The Minority Caucus will meet via Zoom today at 12:30. Via Zoom at 12:30. We have a lunch for you in room 216 here at the Capitol. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dollar for an announcement.
Thank you, Speaker. The Telecommunications Subcommittee of Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications will be meeting upstairs in 403 at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman F. Stration for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Both subcommittees of the House Judiciary Committee will meet today. The Gunter Subcommittee will meet at 1:30. The Scoggins Subcommittee will meet at 3 o'clock. Both meetings in 132.
Chair recognizes Chairman Stevens for an announcement.
Thank you, Speaker. The Economic Development and Tourism Committee will meet today, short meeting, 341 at 1:30. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Collins for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Public Safety Homeland Security Committee will meet today at 1:30, CLOB 406. Public Safety, CLOB 406 at 1:30.
Chair recognizes Chairman Setzler for an announcement.
The House Committee on Science and Technology Committee meeting today has been canceled. We're going to reschedule for later in the week. Science and Technology has been canceled for this afternoon. We'll have another date to be determined.
The chair recognizes the Majority Leader of the House for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021.
The majority leader has moved that this House be adjourned until Tuesday, February 23rd at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it, and this House will be adjourned until Tuesday, February 23rd at 10 a.m.